Introducing Zach Davis and Josh Anderson with the SoundMoney Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of SoundMoney, Sound Principles, the Believers Podcast. My name is Josh Anderson here with Zach Davis. How are you today, Zach?
I'm good. Hey, everybody. What's going on?
Man, what an awesome day it is, Zach. It's been a little while since we've been together. It's the summer time, and man, you and I have been going all over the world, literally. Where'd you just get home from, Zach?
Yeah, we actually took a little trip, spent about 12 days over in Spain, traveled and saw about 7 or 8 different cities, and it was cool. But I'm glad to be home.
Yeah, I'm glad to be home. And my goodness, let's see. I spent 8 days at the National Championships for wrestling, Greco Freestyle Wrestling, in Fargo, North Dakota, and went right from there to our lodge. For the listeners that don't know, we have an incredible lodge called the Salmon River Lodge that is truly remarkable. And we got to spend 7-8 days there with some of our top salespeople for one of our companies, 7K Metals, and just had a tremendous time there. And we just and then as soon as we got home from that, we had to go elsewhere for business, and we had people flying in town from all over the world, and so we have just not been home until today for like the whole month of July. It's gone. It's August. We missed all of July. All of July we were traveling for business. So
yeah, I was counting the other day. I think in total I slept in my own bed less than 10 days, all July. Like it was insane.
I didn't even get that. I don't even know of not even a chance. Maybe 5 at the very max for me. But guess what? We're excited to be back and take the opportunity. Man, Zach, we have had a lot of feedback. People really seem to enjoy the episodes about our experiences in the Alaskan mountain range hunting the majestic Dall sheep. And so first of all, for all the listeners who endless text messages and phone calls and notes of how that impacted people and how they thought about it and some of the goals and some of the life things that they've started to do. It's been really remarkable to me, the non-hunters from around the world who have reached out to us to say that they absolutely loved those episodes. And so we promised at the end of those episodes that we would take some time and share some of the business principles and some of the life principles that we learned there. So we shared those experiences, but want to dive in today to some of the principles that we learned there and some of the thoughts that we have around it, how maybe it's changed us as people, right? It's now been several years ago, right, since we did those experiences, and how maybe they've changed us. So Zach, I'll just start with you for a minute. What are some of the principles that you learned about yourself or that you've used since then that have helped you in business or in your personal life?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for me, I think one of the biggest things is, I always say that your business can never be bigger than you are. And what I mean by that is your own mental agility or your own mental toughness. Like the battle in business is actually not about being smarter than anybody else. It's not about really having a better idea than anybody else. You can have all those things, but the problem is if you can't win the battle between your ears of self-concept and all those types of things. And if you're not mentally tough, your business is never going to be very big. Like it will only get to the point where you are. So for me, it was actually one of the reasons that I think I shared it in the podcast. It was one of the reasons I originally wanted to go on the hunt, and why I don't know if you remember, if you don't, you have to go back and listen to the podcast, but where I mentioned that when I was flying in, the outfitter was like, "Oh, we think we have a sheep spotted on the mountain. You should be able to get one the first day." Where I'm like, "That's not the sheep hunt I'm looking for. Like, I want the traditional, the grind, right?" And the reason for that is because every once in a while you need, in business we push ourselves a lot and we have lots of challenges, but sometimes you need something else outside of that to break up the monotony. But you really need to go do something that pushes you really, really hard, because you sort of hit this ceiling of what you think you're capable of. And this was a really good way for me to go do something that was extremely difficult, that was painful physically and painful mentally. And so one of the biggest things I learned on that trip was the ability to harvest a sheep and do what we did, at least the experience I had, was about 90% mental and 10% physical. So like there were lots of times when I wanted to just quit and lay down and take a nap and be done for the day, but you knew you couldn't. And so mentally, what you had to do is you had to dig deep and find inside mentally the real reason why you wanted to be there and do it. And then one step after another, pretty quick, you're at the top of the next mountain and you've made that next benchmark. So one of the applications for me personally is sometimes that happens in business where you just get beat up over and over and over. And whether it's government regulation or it's your competitors or it's dealing with employees or whatever the case may be, you just get pounded on that mountain, so to speak. And you might have all the skill sets, you might have all the negotiating skills, you might know all the accounting stuff, you might know all the finance stuff, you might know all the banking stuff, you might know all the regulations. But if you're not mentally tough enough to go through all those challenges and you haven't developed personally, then you won't, right? You'll lay down on the mountain of those challenges and you'll die and your business will die. So really being able to fix what's going on in here so that you can push yourself to make the next step in business. Because, I mean, let's admit it, business can be really, really hard sometimes. Really hard.
Really, really challenging, right? And I'm glad you said some of those things. I was thinking about, as you said that, some of the lessons that I have used since then, right? A couple thoughts came to mind. One, business, two things. One, it's a microcosm of that experience for me. Lots of really hard work when there's no success in sight, whether that's climbing a mountain for 5 hours to go 300 yards for 5 hours with no success in sight, right? Like absolutely no vision that you're making any progress. Oftentimes when we start a new business venture, which call us crazy, that's like our favorite thing in the planet is to start a new business venture, right? Like it is literally my favorite thing. But lots of times you go months and months and sometimes years without seeing any progress. It's like climbing those Shell Hills in the Alaskan mountain range. You cannot see any progress because every footstep takes so much effort. But there's also moments of excitement in a new business or an opportunity where you see for the first time a little bit of daylight and you maybe you acquire a customer in a different way than you anticipated. Maybe the customer does something with their dollar in their interaction with your company that you didn't expect. And you get these moments of exuberance. Maybe it's seeing a sheep at 4 miles away that you think's legal, only to find out that yes, there's opportunity there in the business. But to make it a reality and to turn it into something that's functional and can last is miles away in the business. You're just not there yet. It's going to take you a lot more effort. And so for me, that experience in Alaska and many others around the world while hunting in those extreme environments has been a microcosm of business. And second, I've learned for myself that, Zach, our listeners don't know this about us, but we love to be in the mountains. Whether that's hunting animals, whether that's fishing, whether that's riding a motorcycle, a snow bike, whether that's riding horses, you name it, right? We love to be in the mountains. But the reason I personally love getting on my motorcycle and riding in the mountains, or the reason why I love going and hunting these animals in very vast areas that are super dangerous, is because when I'm there, I can actually turn off all the noise. And so for me, I think all listeners that are listening to this podcast, if they're in business or trying to run a business or start a business, or they're trying to find success in their job within their company, they've got to find a safe haven where they can go turn it off. Because what happens is you turn it off, your brain actually can then really dive in and think about solutions to the real problems, not the noise. So I'll never forget, right? Like what most people won't know. I'll share a picture. I'm going to find this picture quickly. That a picture I took in Alaska that I had when I had the epiphany where I was. I'm going to share the screen. This will be relevant for some of our listeners. Move this over there, maybe. Let's see if I can do that. This is a simple picture, right? I'm sitting on top of this mountain. It's a beautiful day. It happened to be a Sunday morning in Alaska. And I was sitting on top of that mountain, and it was sitting right there, Zach, where we had been dealing with a severe problem with some partners inside of SoundMoney. Some real issues, some things that we actually almost had to just quit the whole project. And it's while I was sitting right there, without any noise, without any confusion, looking for sheep, maybe taking a nap because it was such a nice day for a minute, that the answer came to me. That the answer actually came to my mind of how to solve a problem we had there. And I believe that I never could have done that, or we could have never come up with those solutions had we not taken time to get away from the noise and to get in a place where, in my thoughts, where God can speak to you, right? Where you can get some divine intervention to your problems. And for me, and for all of our listeners who use SoundMoney, that happened for me there on a Sunday morning in Alaska, looking over the most amazing, beautiful place. But I think for me, I've learned in my life that I need those distractions sometimes in business to think about business properly. I know, Zach, you've had lots of these experiences that some of our best business ideas have come inside of a helmet on a motorcycle, right? And so if you're listening today and you're struggling with inside your business, right, traditional business, or your or a network marketing downline, or you name it, selling a product, I would tell you, find opportunities to go do a hobby that you love and use that time to clear your mind and to get rid of the distractions so that you can be present for inspiration. Because a lot of times it doesn't happen behind this desk.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. 100%. Because it's like you're too close to the forest to see the trees. When you're in the business every single day, the problems, it's hard to see them clearly, right? And when you step back and slow down, all of a sudden sometimes those problems pop up and you're like, oh, this is not difficult to solve. Why did I think this was such a challenge? I had an interesting experience too. When I flew in, you probably had the same thing. When I got on the airplane and I flew in, there was like these butterflies, right, of like excitement that came up, but also just this little bit of tinge of nervousness because you didn't know what you were, getting into. Which, by the way, I just read a study not too long ago that says when you're really nervous and you get that feeling, it is the exact same physical and emotional response as when you're excited. So the difference between the reaction of those two is what you've processed up here.
Wow.
Your body doesn't know the difference. Your brain does. So like when you're super scared about something, if you can try to figure out how to make your brain be excited about it, completely changes the situation. That's a side point.
Wow.
When I was flying in, right, you're seeing all these beautiful mountains and you're super excited and the vistas are incredible and you're thinking, oh, there's going to be sheep on the other side of that mountain and this is going to be a great experience. We landed, we took everything out of the airplane. You shove it all back in your backpack because you have to unpack it all basically to stick it in the bottom pod of the airplane to kind of get it all spread out the weight. It won't just all fit in there in one big bag. So after the plane lands, you get out, you take everything out of the plane, and you have to reorganize your bag. It's like 70 pounds in this bag. And I remember I got everything back in that bag, and I looked down, and the campsite that we were going to be in was about a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, kind of down the drainage in this flat little spot, down this creek bed. And when I got out, the guys were like, okay, we're going to go down there. We'll stay the night tonight, and then we'll hunt in the morning. I'm like, okay, great. I put the pack on, 70 pounds, right? And I'd been preparing. I'm walking down the mountain, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Okay, I'm good. Like, I don't know how many times I've started a company where I've had that same feeling. There's like this little tinge of nervousness because you don't know what you're getting into, but there's all this excitement built up to it. And then we hunted the next day. It was great. I told a story about how my guide had to go out. Another guide came in, and then he's like, we're leaving. We're going 10 miles away from here. That day when I put my pack on and I got in the alders at about mile 5, all the excitement was gone. All of a sudden I was like, I might be in trouble. Like, I've trained for this and I've lugged this pack around and I know I'm in shape, but I might be in trouble. I'm not going to be able to keep up with this guy and get over the mountain. And oftentimes when we start a business, it is like that. Like, you have this idea, you're excited about it, you want to go for it, you have all this energy and all this vinegar, and then some problem hits you, and it's all of a sudden like excitement is gone. And the real question for anyone dealing with that right now, or that is going to start a business, is why are you actually doing it? So when I hit that spot, for me personally, I had to kind of remind myself, okay, why am I doing this? And for me, it wasn't the sheep. For some people, it would be the sheep, and that's fine. But for me, it wasn't the sheep. I had to, like, you wanted this, Zach, because you wanted to test yourself. Are you going to play the game? Are you going to stay on the mountain? And it's, and it's like, you look at these mountains, and some of the lessons that came for me was, some of those mountains you could charge because mentally you were there and you were ready, right? You're feeling good. And then some of those mountains, after going over a few and not finding a legal ram, and then going, we got to go over that mountain. But what if there's not a legal ram over that mountain? And I don't know how many times in business I've looked at situations and gone, okay, we've been over the mountain a couple times and it hasn't worked. We've spent the cash. We've spent the time. We've spent the effort, and the reward didn't come. Am I going to spend the money one more time? Like, we got to put up another $1 million, or we got to put up another $5 million, or 500,000, or 50, or whatever it is. And looking at it going, am I willing to pay the price right now to see what's on the other side of that mountain? And so often people get to a certain point and they spend and spend, or they put time and effort into it, and then they die at the bottom of the next mountain. They're not willing to get up there and see what's on the other side because they've been over a couple and it's been really hard and there wasn't the prize. And so the mental, for me, just reminding myself while I'm there, it's not always about the making the money in the business as well. It's about, what have I learned? What am I learning? What new skills am I gaining? What new challenges are we going to overcome? The next time I see them, I'll know how to navigate them, right? So that was really kind of an interesting aha moment for me too when I was up there and trying to think about how it relates with businesses.
I'm glad
to have the mental fortitude to keep going.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that, because you and I have been really blessed in life to have some really good mentors, and one of our mentors, or one of our business partners, we've had on the podcast, Roger Dall. He's, to me, a prime example of someone who is always in business willing to go to the next peak, right? Like, just because you've gotten really tired and the business isn't doing well and you're not making the money you want to make, or you're losing ridiculous amounts of money, that it's worth, you've done all the work to get there and you've learned a whole bunch of lessons to get to that point. It's always worth to go to the next peak. It's always worth climbing to see what's on the other side of the business mountain. And what I've been amazed at in our journey in the last 25 years of business is that we oftentimes, when you're climbing the next mountain that you were going to quit on, whether it's the company needs more funds, whether you've had to lay off all the employees because there's no money to pay the employees, but the groundwork's already laid, and you've got to see, oftentimes you find a different way up the mountain. You find a different path, even sometimes a whole different business model to sell the widget or to do the business, or you find out while you're climbing that last mountain, because you have a whole bunch of new knowledge of how to climb a mountain, that there's a different way to do it. And that becomes the thing that the marketplace says, I will give you my money for that. Because at the end of the day, all business really is a buyer and a seller. Every business is a buyer and a seller. Someone is making or providing a service or making a product, and someone else says it has enough value to part with their money and give it to them. That's all the business world is. And I just love that in life, a lot of times, if we go challenge ourselves on individual things, like in this case, hunting Dall sheep, or it could be a marathon, or it could be a 5K, or it could be swimming a mile, whatever it is, right? When we do those things, we find out that there are oftentimes rewards on the other side of the mountain if we just go one more, just one more. And now, in the moment, I'm gonna tell you, I hunt with this moron Zach. Like, there is no mountain that we can't go see over one more. Okay, and so it's gonna get you in trouble sometimes, but most often it will help you out.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, this is interesting too, I've seen it in you as well. So we love to hunt elk, and when we go hunt elk, we do like an elk camp, right? It's pretty nice. I mean, it's like not.
Well,
it's not rough.
Let's leave it to the imagination, Zach, what the elk camp is like. Okay.
So when you go like on an elk hunt, you go out in the morning, you hunt. Usually, you come back at noon, eat some lunch, sit for a couple hours because there's no elk movement in the afternoon, typically, right? And then you go back out in the evening for a hunt. And I don't know how many times I've limited myself, Josh, with where I glass or where I walk because I'm like, I got to be back by this certain time to this spot. And one thing, and maybe this is only applicable for the people that are our fellow hunters out there, right? But here's what I've learned after that sheep hunt: there's no mountain I'm not willing to go to. There's no more like, oh, I can't get to that because I can't get to this. I can't get back to my main camp by that time. I look and I go, well, if I get there and it's midnight, I'll just sleep for a couple hours on the mountain and then I'll come back. Right? Like, it totally broke open the limits of what we thought we should be doing or could be doing. Does that make sense? I don't know if you've noticed that too.
Yeah.
Like,
Changes
you'll go anywhere now.
Yeah. In life, right? When we do hard things or we challenge ourselves and we break beyond a barrier, lots of times we find out that the way that we've been doing things isn't the only way.
Yep.
And there's a different whole way out there to do things that may be much more successful than what we've been doing. And I've said in the podcast, and I've said while speaking to lots of people in the world, that can't be afraid of change. Can't be afraid of that. We have to embrace it because it's a constant in our lives. So, Zach, I'd love to be able to take a few minutes as we close out today on the topic of, for the person listening who driving in their car today, they're watching on their computer, they're thinking, you know what? Yeah, that works for Zach Davis to be able to go hunt a Dall sheep in Alaska. That's just so far out of my realm, my world, they're not a hunter. They're not someone who loves to go ride a motorcycle. What would you say to them if they're saying to themselves while they're listening, man, that's awesome that they got to have that experience, but that's not me. What would you say to them?
I think it goes back to the very point of what I mentioned in the very beginning. Your mind limits you. It's not your skill set. It's not. I always say there is somebody out there that is way dumber than me that is being way more successful at business because they're willing to go try. And that, I think, is the number one setback to people who are not successful in business. They just don't start because they have this mind jungle in their head with all these voices from the past or all their programming or whatever of somebody saying, oh, you can't do that. You're not that smart. You're not a successful business person. Oh, you failed already once. You'll fail every time before. Whether it's how you grew up with the way your parents talk to you or your friends or the people that you hang around with. So my advice is just do it. That prime example, when I came back from my sheep hunt, okay, I think I just turned 40. It was hell. Like, it was rough. But I loved it. When I got back, there was a guy going out that was in his 70s. Mm-hmm. So he was not willing to let everybody else tell him that hunting sheep was a young man's game. I'd suggest going when you're younger because it's going to make things a lot easier for you. But the point is, just get started. Like, that guy did not let anybody else convince him that he couldn't do it. And he actually ended up harvesting a sheep. And it was awesome because he didn't have any of these limiting beliefs. So my advice is just do it. Somebody else who is not as smart as you, who is not as in shape as you, who does not have as much money as you, they're doing it. So you may as well already. You're the one putting the limiting factor in the equation, right? You're the one stopping yourself. So work on this. Like, get it figured out and go do it. It is so worth it.
I 100% agree with you. And I would echo that. And I would add to it that we all have dreams, right? Zach and I both shared the first times we ever saw one of those sheep when both of us were young men. teenage boys. And we held a dream for 30 years. And I would just say, if you're listening in the car and you're driving, or you're thinking the day and you're thinking, well, that's not me. Well, we don't expect everyone to be a hunter or a dirt biker or a horseman. That's us. But you have something that you're passionate about. Or at one time in your life, you had something you were passionate about. And I would say to everyone listening, pick something that you've dreamt about in the past or that you love to do now, and set a goal around it. Set some type of a benchmark, a dream, a vision about it that you want to achieve. And it may take a few years to get there, right? Like, and it could be as simple as I talked to an individual the other day who they said they listened to the podcast and they said they loved playing pickleball, but they never played competitive. It's going to sound funny to some. I'm sorry, the person that said it to me, I didn't ask for your permission. I'll share your name. He said, I've never played competitive pickleball, but after listening to your experiences, I've decided to join. I'm going to play in a tournament. Guess what? That makes me more happy than anything, right? Like, it's good. So for some of you are going, well, that's silly, Josh. It's not silly. They're willing to go out and pick something they want to try and achieve. And they're willing to go out and compete for it or try it. And the preparation to do it, the mental preparation, the physical preparation will make them a better person. And when they get done with it, they will find out that they can set goals in other aspects of their lives. And they can now have a dream about something else in their life. So I would just say, make sure that you take time to set some goals and some dreams. And notice I said dreams, because dreams aren't just goals. Dreams are bigger than those things. And you can make them a reality too. And if you're a business person, they are essential. You have to identify what it is you're trying to do for the rest of mankind or for your family or whatever it is. And you got to make your business part of your dream. We have a saying at our house. I say it to all my boys. I just said it today to one of them before we came over here, that if you're doing something that you don't love and you're spending any amount of significant time doing it, stop. Because we are meant to find things that we're passionate about in this world, and then we're meant to try and become great at them. That's what we're here for. So pick something you're passionate about, work on it, and try and become great at it. Now, you may not become great at it, but the process by which you're going through to become great will make you great at lots of things in life. And so those are just a few of the lessons we've learned.
And, I think the key word to what you just said there, Josh, is you.
Mm.
There are so many people who do things because they think it's what's cool, or they think it's what will make people like them, or they think it's what everybody else wants them to do. When you set a goal or you have a dream, it better be yours.
Mm.
I think the number one reason that most people don't get what they want in life is because it's not what they really want. They think somebody else wants it for them. So they're setting a goal of what somebody else thinks. That's problematic, because when it gets really hard, you're quitting, you're bailing out. I've had lots of young people come and ask me if I would listen to their business plan or if I'd, mentor them or whatever. Do you know how many absolutely stupid business ideas I've heard, Josh?
Few thousand.
Yes.
Mm.
But you know what? Never, ever, ever, ever do I tell them that business won't work. I wouldn't start that business because it's not a dream of mine. I don't care about that thing, right? I'm not passionate about it, but they are. And I've seen some of those businesses where I'm like, oh, dang, I was a moron for not investing in that, because they kicked butt and it's making money, but I didn't get it. And so, I think with what you're saying is you have to pick what you want, not what somebody else wants. And you have to, like pickleball. I would never want to go play competitive pickleball. It's not my thing. So, but it doesn't mean it can't be somebody else's thing. And you can't let what I think about pickleball deter you from what you want to go do. And too many people do that. How many times have you driven down the road and seen a car and somebody driving like, that's an ugly car? Or their front door, right? It's like, whoa, why would you ever paint your door that color? Did they paint the door for you? No. They built the house the way they did because they like it. What does it matter? They're not doing it for you, right? They should be doing it for them. So I think that's a huge concept that you just pointed out is you have to have a dream, but it better be your dream, not what you think your parents want you to do, not what you think your spouse wants you to do, not what you think anybody else wants you to do, but what do you want to do? What are you really passionate about? And even if you think the world's going to think it's dumb, the idea of the iPhone was ridiculous when it was first born. Like everybody said, nobody will use it. We just came from Palm Pilots, right? And they were the most unuser-friendly thing in the world. There's been so many ideas that people have had that everybody else thought was stupid. But because someone really latched on to it, was passionate about it, didn't listen to what everybody else said, they changed the world.
And that's really the key there, Zach, is what you want to achieve in the world, what you want to do. And so we appreciate everybody taking the time this week. We look forward to sharing with you some future podcasts next week. And just want to say we appreciate all of you. We appreciate the heartfelt and genuine thoughts that have been shared around some of these episodes. And keep it coming. Make a comment on one of the platforms and let us know how it's impacted you in your life. And we just want to say thank you. We appreciate you, and we can't wait to talk to you next week. So
yep.
see you later.
You guys are awesome. See ya.